You are tuned to ARP on the Accelerated Radio Network. It's 12 noon, and it's time to have lunch. Lunch with the Finance Bunch. Lunch with the Finance Bunch. Lunch with the Finance Bunch. Bringing money talk you can understand. And now here's your host, Miss Charline.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Miss Charline, and welcome to Lunch with the Finance Bunch. Today we have in our studio again, Dr. Utley. How are you, my dear?
I'm good. I'm glad to be back.
We are happy to have you back. And last time you were on the show, I had you promise that you'd come back and talk about your book. And so I read the book in between because I said I need to read it before I have you come on and then talk about something I don't know what I'm talking about. So I wanted to read the book. And I just want to start by saying, and I told you this off camera, that your book is absolutely fascinating.
Thank you.
And with me being from New York originally and being a part of the beginning of this hip hop culture and seeing it from its infancy and to what it's grown in today, I think that you did an excellent job of capturing all of the different facets of it. So I don't know if anyone's told you this, but thank you.
Aww.
Yeah, you did. You captured it, and you gave it an educated twist that I find fascinating, number one, and complimentary, because I think sometimes rap gets a bad rap, and they think everyone in the culture is ignorant, uneducated, not savvy, not sophisticated, and not articulate. And so I wanted to thank you for giving rap a facelift and getting it to be seen in a higher light on a more intellectual level, then, because I mean, it's an economy in and of itself.
True story.
Right?
Yeah.
So my first question is probably a question everybody ask you. What made you decide to write this book? What made you decide?
So once upon a time, I was 13-ish.
Okay.
In a church parking lot in Indianapolis, Indiana. I was raised very fundamentalist Baptist, a very conservative environment, and I heard some other teenagers playing rap music in the church parking lot after 11 o'clock service.
Okay.
And the first thing I thought was, that is against the rules. That is so blasphemous, and that's kind of cool.
They're going to get in trouble, but maybe I should listen more.
And in that moment, I realized that the rules that the adults were giving us about the distinctions we should have between religion and rap music just felt false. Okay. Not just to me, but to also my generation and the folks who were making the music. I think it was actually Snoop Dogg that they were playing in the church parking lot. So I like to tell people that I started writing rap and religion in my 13-year-old brain that day. I was just like, it's not as big as a disconnect as they tell us that it is.
Right.
Someone should start to explore that. And then it's many, many years later before I actually start exploring it. But that's the moment where I just thought, this is wrong, but it's not. It's so right at the same time.
At the same time, yeah. And I think that goes as testament to how judgmental sometimes people can be without looking further into what they're judging.
Yeah.
To see the actual maybe similarities in it.
But I also think it's a lot of work to understand rap music if you don't already, right?
That's true.
Yeah,
that's
so
true.
You have to do the work to sort of understand the culture and understand the environment, and where you're talking about the economy and to know where these young people are coming from. Like, It requires a lot of investment. If it isn't your world, it requires a lot of investment from the outside to really understand. And so it's so much easier to just dismiss.
Exactly.
Kids these days, that seems blasphemous. I can't understand what they're saying.
Right.
And then all of that could be true, again, if you're standing on the outside looking in and not trying to actually go inside the culture to understand what's happening.
Right, because I have to confess for myself that, even being at the beginning of it, because, I was right at the end of my teens when rap started to take momentum outside of New York. In fact, I went to a small community college out here, and I brought one of the first rap albums out here with me because no one understood what I was talking about, and radio wasn't really picking it up on the West Coast, at least not where I was at. And so in trying to explain this music, people were looking at me like with blank stares. So when I went home that summer, bought an album and brought it back with me. And I remember being in my apartment, and it was like 5 or 6 of us, and we were just standing around listening to it, and everybody was jaw dropped, like, where'd you get that? What is that?
What is it?
Yeah, what is that? Who is that? Like, where can we buy that? You know? And so that was right at the beginning. And for me, even kind of not being as tuned in as I was then, but just kind of observing almost as an outsider now, to see the different facets that it's taken on, I am excited about it and also confused by it. Mm-hmm. So it's, you know, so even for me, who was, I could say at the beginning, to see where it's gone this far is just kind of fascinating.
Yeah, rap music has had so many iterations since the very beginning. I was trying to figure out like where I would say like I fit, and I'm like, well, maybe I'm at the beginning of the first middle.
Okay, yes.
Right? When you're trying to find your heyday. But I was reading a study that said that most people don't discover new music after 33.
Okay.
Right? After your mid-30s. And for me, like, that's been true. Like, why? Because the investment, right?
That's right.
The work to get in and understand the culture and what's going on with young people today, it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. Now, your book being a nonfiction versus a novel, because a novel is stories. And these are true and factual events with people who are identifiable in your book, right? And so what made you decide to write your book from that perspective?
Yeah. So I'm trained as a rhetorician. And so essentially that means that I'm interested in how people use symbols to make sense of the world. So technically the book is a rhetorical criticism. It's looking at different songs. It's looking at different interviews and conversations with artists and thinking about, how might that be interpreted? Right. And so when I do interpretation, I'm not trying to get into someone's head, right? I'm not saying this is what Kanye meant and this is what Snoop was thinking and this is what Tupac really wanted to say. Well, I don't know those things. You can only know those things if you ask the originators. And even then, you might not get to the truth because things change. And when you mature, like the way you see your past is different from how you were living it in that moment. So I think a lot of that like intention gets lost and isn't really that important. But what's important is how people might interpret the text. Because as an artist, when you put something out into the world, you don't know what people are going to do with it.
That's right.
And you're never in control of that.
Exactly.
So as a critic, that's where I get to play. I'm like, well, what if people did this? And what if they interpreted it that way? And what if they did something else that was really interesting? And so sometimes people are like, I never thought of it that way. Doesn't resonate with me, but I never thought of it that way. And that's absolutely fine. That's the spirit of criticism. So the goal for me in writing the book was just to give people options for interpreting the text. And hopefully they come up with their own interpretations. But this is just my interpretation based on my point of view of these 100 or so rap songs. Exactly.
And you do it so well. When you wrote the book, did you stick to your original concept, or did it take on a life of its own? Because sometimes that happens, right?
Yeah, it definitely took on a life of its own because the book is based on my dissertation. And my dissertation was about 3 rap songs.
Wow.
So to move from 3 to 100.
To 100, yes. It definitely took on a life of its own.
In and of itself.
It went from being an infant to a giant.
Absolutely. But the dissertation was still, 100 pages. It's about these 3 rap songs, but it was so in-depth. And one of my advisors told me, no one's going to buy a book about 3 songs. And I was like, he's probably right. Yes. He's probably right about that. So let's see if I can expand it, like across time, across geography, across different concepts. And at the time that I published it, I wanted it to be as comprehensive as possible. If you're talking about rap and religion, then you want to talk about the songs that I've listed in this book. So public shout out to my assistants who built like screens and screens of Google Sheets documents with spreadsheets and different rap songs and different videos. And it was really a huge undertaking to get all of that stuff in one place. And then pick from the thousands, pick from the 100 that I was actually going to discuss in the book.
And for me, that was going to be my next question. Like, how do you do that? Like, gather all that information and sift through it and find the 100 songs that you want to talk about and make sure that it's entertaining, because I have to tell you, there wasn't a chapter in that book that I was not completely fascinated by. And like, the book is so well written that you can literally open it and just point and start reading and go, wow, you want to go back, you want to go forward. It was that good to me. And that says a lot about a book, when you can just open it and just literally point at a page and start reading that page and get meaning out of it that will make you want to continue reading and go back and start at the beginning. So it's very well written, very well written.
So 2 keys to success when writing a book. One,
Yes.
you need to keep your behind in the chair long
Okay.
enough to actually do so. That's
Right.
the hardest part. And 2, get some help. I mean,
Okay.
it really is necessary. I did have help in compiling the videos because, again, and the songs, I'm biased. You know, I like what I like, and I say that in the book. Like,
Right.
this book is biased to my favorites.
Right.
But also, you need to get someone else to pull their favorites and someone else to pull their favorites. And by doing that, that's how you get the broader swath. So I used a lot of social media. I'm like, hey, I'm looking for a video that does X, Y, and Z. What are your favorite songs? And had all my friends on Facebook, they would list their favorite songs and be like, okay, yeah, I got the popular ones. These are on the list, but I'd never heard of that one. Like, let me go
listen
check
to
it
that,
out.
yeah.
So I did that. I did a lot of crowdsourcing and public compiling, and my assistants helped me, and we built these big, like I said, spreadsheets. And then I just went through each and every one, and I started looking for patterns and themes. I'm like, okay, well, what stands out? What seems to be happening here? But the other part in getting some help is having an accountability partner.
Okay.
So again, public shout out to Dr. Marsha Dawkins. She was writing a book at the same time.
Oh, okay.
And I was getting really frustrated. I was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. Like, intellectually, my interests are moving past rap and religion. I was already 2 years behind on my contract.
Okay. We're going to
and
talk about that too.
And she was like, I'm writing this book. She was like, come on, Ev, we can do it together. And I was like, nah, I don't want to. You know, and she was like, we can do it together. So I called the publisher and I was like, I'm going to need a deadline, an extension on the deadline. And he said, how much longer do you need? And I was unprepared for that because I expected him to say, no more extensions. We're going to kill your contract.
Right.
And then I said, another year? He said, sure. And I was like, really?
Like, wow. Okay.
So they really wanted the book. They were going to wait another full year for it.
Wow.
And at that point, like, I think I had started a document and I put the title on it, but I couldn't even find it. I didn't remember what I saved my original document under. Like, I had 0 text on the page for the book.
Wow.
So then I called her and I was like, he said yes. She was like, all right, we have work to do. So each month we wrote a chapter and swapped it at the end of the month. And I was never going to be the slacker friend that didn't have something to swap.
Okay.
So we banged out our books in about 6 to 9 months. Like, we both swapped chapters every month. We gave each other feedback. We wrote again. And then we went to the next chapter and wrote again. And essentially that's how we got it done.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But total time, how long did it take? Not from when you got focused on just, getting it done, but from start of the concept to completion of the book, how long did it take you?
I mean, well, that was from when I was 13.
13 years old. That's right.
School.
That's right.
But I'm not about to tell everybody how many years.
No.
But I did. I mean, I worked on it in graduate school as my dissertation, so I've been thinking about it for a really,
Right.
really, really long time.
That's amazing. I wanted to bring that point out because sometimes people, it's great if you can write a book in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, whatever. But sometimes it takes a little bit longer than that to fully get the body of work you need, especially when it's something that is not a novel. It's a nonfiction, and it's a body of work that you're putting together from other work that you've done. So I really want people to get the feeling that when you're writing a book, sometimes if it is your own story, and you're not analyzing someone else's work, it may be a little easier. It might not take as long. I don't know. And if you're writing a novel, depending on the story you're trying to create. But I just want them to get the understanding that it takes time, discipline, planning, and focus.
And sometimes you need time to become the person that can write the book.
Right.
And sometimes you need to grow up. Sometimes you need more life experiences. Sometimes you just need more practice writing
That's true,
to
too.
become a better writer. So however long it takes you to write your book is however long it was supposed to take you to write your book. I mean, I suppose I could have written that book when I initially had the contract, but then, it
wouldn't be
have been
what
this
it
version.
is. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it is what it was supposed to be.
Yes.
Right. Now, do you agree with other writers? I've listened to and spoken to other writers who say that once the work is complete, it's almost like giving birth. They kind of, it's a living, breathing, not an inanimate object anymore. It's actually has a voice of its own. Do you agree with that?
Having never given birth, I can't really say exactly, but I have been fascinated with what people have done with it.
Okay.
Like, several of my friends have assigned the books in their classes, and they might send me a final paper or quotes from students, and I didn't quite see it that way, but I think that that's really cool. Or
Right.
it's gotten several reviews, and to have people review the book and see their perspectives on it, I'm like, that's not really what I was thinking, but that's
Okay.
pretty awesome. But then, there are a few like writer tricks that I've done in the book, and just things that I really wanted to do to see if anybody would notice, and to have someone hit me up on Twitter and be like, hey, so I got that thing that you did on page X, Y, and Z. I'm like, that's awesome too. Right? Someone was really reading and paying attention. So I guess the reactions to the book have been the best part for me, because when it was out in the world and no one had, when it first came out and no one had read it yet, it was just kind of like, we'll see what happens.
You'll see what happens,
But
right.
I wasn't really getting critical feedback. Like my friends, like, Dr. Dawkins, who read it, she was like, it's great. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't really count anymore because you've been seeing it
exactly
since the beginning. But to her, she was like, no, I probably count more than anyone else because I saw the baby version of this book.
Right.
But just getting people's reactions. And I wrote it for young people, and I dedicated it to my hip hop critics because I was teaching a class on hip hop criticism, and to see them grow up with it, do the different things with it, and students explore it. That's been the best part.
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe that. Now, what would you say is the best way to write a book? Do you go out and find a publisher? Or do you think self-publishing is kind of the way to go, or does it matter?
It matters. I was very unhappy with my publishing experience
Okay.
with the original publisher of the book. It was a terrible experience. Even though they wanted the book and they were willing to give me the extension, they just wanted it as part of their numbers game. Like they weren't vested in the actual content of the book. And I felt like in their marketing and promotions, they did a lot of ghettoizing of the book. Right? So they only wanted to put it in the African American study section. And I'm like, yeah, but what about the music section? And what about the religion section? They're like, no, that's not where this goes. And I was like, okay. Then when they sent me the original covers of the book, they were the most racist images of black men I've ever seen in my entire life. And then they just put my name on it. And so when I wrote them a firm email explaining, like outlining all the reasons why it was racist and unacceptable, like no one responded. But when I got on the phone, I yelled at people and I said that this was unacceptable and I wasn't going to deliver the book. Then they were like, okay, Dr. Utley, do whatever you want. Right. So again, like I had to be an angry black woman in order to get someone there to listen to me. So it was it was a very like the institutionalized racism in the publishing industry is real. And it's also like being under a rapper contract, right? The royalties that I were getting from the book, they were piddly amounts. Right? And I was never making any money back, and I had sold thousands of copies and I hadn't seen a penny. I mean, it was an exploitative experience from start to finish. So I called the publisher and I was like, I want to buy the rights back. And they said, okay. So the money that I spent to get the rights back, I've more than made as a paperback version of the book, because they were also, if you go online, I think the book is selling in hard copy for $41.
Okay.
I'm like, no one that I wrote this book for is going to spend $41. I wouldn't spend $41 on my book in hard copy. I'm like, it should be a $20 book so that college students and young people can
read it, talk about it, debate it, do whatever they do.
So when I bought the paperback rights back, then I was able to price it at a reasonable price point. I was able to sell it. I can sell it out of my trunk at an even more reasonable price point.
Right.
And I can put the covers on it that I want. Like essentially I had a student design that cover. And then
and I love it, by the way. Leilani, can you get a close-up shot of this?
Yeah.
Because this is awesome.
Thank you. The publisher wouldn't pay him for it, and they didn't want to give him credit for it either.
That's crazy.
So I paid him out of pocket, and I apologized profusely. I was like, I will tell everyone that you did this cover.
Right.
And eventually they ultimately did put his credit on the cover. But it was a terrible experience.
So like you're fighting from beginning to end.
Beginning to end. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, that's good to know.
So self-publishing has made it so much more accessible. But I guess, splitting the difference, I've got the credibility of having had a publisher, so it's not a vanity book. But now that I own the rights, I can actually do things with it and put it out in the market. It's sold so much more under my cheaper price point than it ever would under their expensive one.
Right, because you wanted it in the hands of the students and young people and, everyone. So a more attractive price point makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. It's amazing. I mean, and rappers themselves get into situations like that themselves.
You sign the contract, you ain't know you was never going to make any money, because, I mean, it's the same thing in the book world. You got to pay them back for this and pay them back for that. And you're like, what? That costs how much? Really? There's no itemization? It's the whole thing. So it really is like being under a rapper contract. Like, read the fine print and then know that you're still going to be exploited.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Definitely. Now, with that being said, are you going to write like Rap and Religion Part 2?
No,
it's a standalone.
I'm gonna take a page out of like rappers' books, and I'm gonna retire at the top of my game. Not like Jay-Z retired, but like really retire at the top of my game. And I'm gonna step out of the rap game and do some other things with my relationship work. But I think that Rap and Religion is gonna stand alone, and it's singular edition.
I can see that. Yeah. I can see that, because you and I talked about this off camera, that Rap and Religion, it's really an analytical view of the culture.
Yes.
And so it has the body of work that it needs to stand alone, really. It doesn't need anything else.
For its time period.
Yeah. It's like it's definitely for this, it's like freeze framing.
Yes.
Right? It's like
Yes.
freeze framing, and it's just perfect in its own right. If it were to be written, it would have to be on the next generation of rappers in
And-
comparison maybe to this generation of rappers.
And that next generation, I'm disconnected
Yeah.
from. It's a true story. Like, I was listening to the XXL Freshman 16, and I was like, I don't.
Huh? Right? Like, what?
Yeah, I was able to get caught up on the drill movement in Chicago. Like, I was able to get in with that. But that's like the last like new movement of rap music that I've actually invested in. So I'm just going to tell the story. Like, I'm not a kid anymore.
Like, I'm done.
It's a very different set of circumstances
Yes.
for me. So, I mean, I'll leave that to the next generation. But ironically, when I first started writing about rap music, I owned all the books that were written about hip hop and rap
Right.
music. Like, they were on my shelf in my office, and now it's impossible, right? Even when I looked on Amazon today, I looked at Rap and Religion, and the books that you might also be interested in purchasing, I was like, those are all new. I've never heard of any new since I dropped Rap and Religion. Like,
Right.
the field of hip hop studies has exploded, and I'm really happy to see it having done so, and I'm happy to participate in it, but it's one and done.
Okay. You know, the funny thing for me, maybe not funny thing, but the interesting part about rap for me is that in knowing a lot of the original rappers who started out in New York, you know how we asked the question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? You know, for them, it would have not been, where do you see yourself in 5 years? It would have been, do you know where you'll be in 40 years or 30 years? Like, do you know that you're developing and putting down the foundation of a culture that's going to last?
No one knew.
No one knew. And they kept saying, it's a fad. It's going to go away. Who's going to listen to that for a long time? Because I remember hearing the criticism and saying, oh, it's 2 years. It's got a 2-year run. 2 years later, oh, it's got a 5-year run. 7 years later, oh, it'll be 10 years. Now it's an ingrained part of music. It has its own, you know, its own award shows, its own everything. There's not a part of the world that you can go to that I can think of where it may be taboo, but that you haven't heard of rap.
But I think that's actually a key difference between like past and present rap music. Before, rappers got into the game because it's who they were.
Right.
It's like, this is who I am. This is what I
Yes.
do. Like, what else would I be doing with myself?
Yes.
Like, this is my form of expression. Like, this
Right.
is my response to oppression. But now I think a lot of people get in the rap game because it's their job.
Right.
You know, so like, no, I'm not supposed to be doing this 10, 15 years. Like, I'm gonna get rich and I'm gonna do something else. Like, there's no, like, before there was a groundwork for longevity because it was rooted in identity.
That's right.
But now it's a commodity, and I think people are doing it as a job, just like anyone else would do a job. And does anyone start a job nowadays thinking they're gonna be doing it for the next 30, 40 years?
That's very true.
No. So I
That's
think
very
that does change the quality of the genre a little bit. More people entering it as, you know, something to do as opposed to who they are.
Well, that and like you said, a way of, you know, making a fast dollar.
Yes.
Like, just, I'm going to get in, I'm going to make a whole lot of money, and I'm going to live in a big house and drive a big car, and there could be, but usually not much thought process past that.
But so we're clear, like, I'm not a purist. Like, I'm not a hip hop purist.
No,
I'm not,
no.
I'm not saying that the kids are doing anything wrong by perceiving
It's
it
just
that way.
different.
Yeah, because listen, anytime black people are making legal money, I'm happy.
Hey, you and me both. Yeah, right.
So if this is how the young people come into the
Right.
game to like make some legal money, then I'm more than happy to see them do that. But I do think it changes,
Right.
the nature of the product.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, because I'm like you. I'm glad you said that, because I know for myself, I'm like, ooh, I'm too old. I just don't. I can't get with it at all. I'm happy it's still here. I'm happy that there are young people, you know, that are creating an income from it. But I have no idea what they're talking about. Seriously, I have no idea, and that's fine. You know. But I do respect and love the fact that what was started still is, and there's still an opportunity for it to flourish and grow. And who knows where it'll be 10 years from now or 20 years from now, whatever. You know, it'll just be interesting.
I'm really curious about that, right? Because in the mid-90s, you know, they nicknamed it Requiem rap because it was all about death. And there's a lot of that in rap and religion because,
Yes.
you know, when you're surrounded by death and you start thinking about, you know, the life after and,
Yes.
and what all of that means for you, your mortality. And now that we're sort of, you know, publicly under fire, right? By powers that be, police in particular. Like,
Yes.
what will the youth do with that? Like, now
Yes.
that Requiem era is back, but in a different way, and being mediated in a different way, I feel like the music could do one of two things. Like, it could explicitly respond to that as a challenge, right?
Because it
So
has
like
that
a
opportunity.
social justice, like public momentum opportunity, or will it just be escapist? Neither of which I could be mad at, right? Because if you're feeling helpless, then of course you want to party.
Right.
Like I
and
always say, there
escape.
should be music to get high to. There should be music to have sex to. There should be music to party to. And so
Right.
maybe that's what the music will do. But maybe, we'll have some mix of the two, right? It's not like there's a monolith when it comes to rap music. Maybe
That's
some
right.
artists will be doing the conscious thing and some will be doing the escapist thing. But I feel like those are going to be the two anchors, because you can't have a social moment like this and not address it either directly or indirectly.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's going to make it interesting.
Yeah, it will.
Because we are in some definitely, I call them throwback times, throwback to the 60s. It's just a little bit more because of social media, because of, everything being live and right in your face. It's much easier to see.
Yes.
So now what do you do with what you see? Because it's always happened.
Exactly.
So let's not get that
nothing's
twisted.
Changed. Yeah.
Nothing's changed.
Except how we access it.
How
yeah.
we access it has changed. That's the only difference. So what do we do with this new ability to access this information? How do we quantify it? How do we respond to it? And in my mind, how do we change it? And so it'll be interesting to see, because, some of the kids, it's raising the consciousness, I think, of young people, and it's putting it in their face. What are you going to do? And so it's pretty interesting.
It's a big question. I mean, I think that the 5-10 years question is, almost kind of untenable in this moment. It's like, what are you going to do today?
Yeah.
And tomorrow, but that's
And
the
next
thing,
week.
that it's so unfortunate that Black people spend so much of our lives just trying to stay alive. Right?
Yes.
As opposed to projecting to the future. It's so much about survival as opposed to
Yes.
thriving. And I think a lot of that gets reflected in the music.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So for you, what is your next project? You said, okay, Rap and Religion is done. This is, we see it. It's wonderful creation. Your work is magnificent in there. But what is next for Dr. Utley? What are you doing next?
So when I was writing Rap and Religion, I had to spend a lot of time reading rapper biographies. And, like most of these rappers, have families with their wives and their
I'm
children.
glad
And
you
then they
mentioned
also
that.
have other families with women who are not their wives.
Yes.
And I was very curious about the phenomena. I was like, well, how do the wives feel about this? And how do the other women feel about this? And I just tried to give the project away to other students and colleagues, and no one wanted it.
Right.
I was like, it's cool, I'll do it, right? So I started doing research on women and infidelity.
Okay.
And so we talked about Love Lines last
Yes.
time, the software that I'm developing to help improve romantic relationships. And so
Yes.
the interviews that I did with women about infidelity informed the game about romantic relationships.
Okay.
So I'm working on that. And then I think I'm working on a self-help relationship book.
That's good.
I'm sort of compiling the assistants to help me with that. So
Okay.
still gathering information on the cloud, doing a few test talks to
interesting.
see how people are down. But then people would always ask me, I was like, okay, well, you're only talking about women and infidelity. Like, what about men? I'm like, well, I'm not really interested in interviewing men about infidelity. It's just, not my thing. But men also have really interesting relationships to sex that I think are worth exploring. And I have a friend, Dr. Tommy Curry, who does a lot of work on African-American men's lives and experiences. And he was telling about all of the men that have these sort of sexual traumas that they're carrying into their adulthood. And they can't talk to anyone about them because Black
Right.
men don't get sexually traumatized. They want to have sex all the time.
Right.
And I'm like, you know what? That stereotype really does need some nuancing. And so I started interviewing Black men about their so men who are 18 and older, about their sexual victimization when they were 13 or younger.
That's very interesting.
And it's been really, really heavy stuff. And so I introduced it to my students last semester. And I was like, we always critique Black men for calling women bitches and hoes in the music. I was like, but what if there are really bitches and hoes in their early lives that
right.
molested them, that sexually assaulted them, that victimized them, and they've got no place to put that anger, right? But it's not something they can ever talk about because it's never okay to do so.
Right.
But, recently, like Lil Wayne and Chris Brown talk about their first sexual experiences with older women, like not necessarily experiences that they were pursuing.
Right.
And so then it starts to come out, it's like, wait, like Black men can be raped. Like, wait, Black men can be sexually assaulted, not just by other men, but also by older women.
Right.
And it happens more frequently than we think. And so those relationship things are things that I'm interested in now. I'm interested in I guess, traumas surrounding sex, whether it's infidelity or whether it's childhood sexual trauma when it comes to the men. So that's the stuff that I've been researching. Just not as fun as listening to rap music. When I get up in the morning, sometimes I'm like, man, this is depressing. I need to start writing about happier stuff again, because it gets really hard to do, but it's really, really important work. And to my knowledge, like, it doesn't exist in the discipline the way that I've been working on it. And so that's what I'm plugging away on now.
Wow. That's interesting. Now, there's an economy when you talk about these different platforms. So in rap, yes, it's, the poetry of it, it's the rhythm, what they're getting across, what they're saying, but there's also an economy that comes along with it. And you touched on that. And this is kind of where it bridges for me, your work, is that the amount of money that's made in rap that affords them the luxury of having more than one family. You know what I'm saying? That's not necessarily, not that men haven't had more than one family before, with or without the money, but I think a part of that is the ability to economically support more than one family. And so that's the part of it that for me is intriguing, because would these women actually participate or stick around if everyone's financial needs could not be supported? So, you know what I'm saying? That's just a question. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the answer to that is, and I'm not judging. It's just a question that comes up for me, because there is an economy that is created through this culture that sustains a family, a legacy. There are rappers who've created enough money to take care of their entire families forever. Dr. Dre being one, and he's not the only one. He's just the first one that comes to mind, because I'm looking at headphones and beats by Dre, so he came to mind. And so when you're talking about families, and the transition from this book to your next book, that's a question that I have. Like, when these women are interviewed, what is the real reason behind their ability to stick with a situation like that on both sides, be it the wife, be it the girlfriend, the baby mama, the whoever, whoever is involved in this layered phenomenon that goes on for years. And then there's children that are born from these relationships who know each other, or if they don't know each other now, will. And then those are relationships that are built or not. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And is there a hierarchy? Is one set of children the children of the queen, and the other set of children you know what I mean? There's all these sub questions. So when you say that, it brings up all these sub questions that are pretty interesting to me.
Well, layered is the perfect word, right? Because there's so many levels to this,
right? Which makes it interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, Dre's a minority, right? Like, I don't know that there are that many rappers that are just rappers that are able to sustain that kind of income. Those that make the money, they have beats, or they do production, or they're like Will Smith and they're also in film, and they have television, they have these other Queen Latifah, they have these other avenues. It isn't rap music in and of itself that's going to make you financially sustainable. Yes. And if rap music has, it doesn't mean that it will be continue in your future. Right. Because we also always hear about rappers that are in trouble because they haven't paid child support. So just because you can't afford doesn't mean that you are. That's right. And I think we'd have to talk to these other women and their children to find out if Daddy Rapper is supporting you economically the way that he can or should. I mean, rumor has it that part of the reason 50 is always filing for bankruptcy is because he doesn't want to pay child support. Right. So there's that kind of rumor. That's a rumor, unsubstantiated. But there's a potential for that kind of shadiness. Yes. Right. But I think that a lot of relationships in the hip hop world are relationships of exchange. They're very transactional. Right. I do this for you because you can do this for me. Right. I take you out and buy you things because you make me look good when you hang out on my arm, like that sort of thing. And so I think that as opposed to love or other reasons that people might partner, that transactional reason is the primary reason. And I'm a firm believer that once relationships start in a certain way, unless you work hard to interrupt that pattern, they will continue in that way.
continue.
So just because you have children together now, like, doesn't mean that transactional exchange has gone away.
Exactly.
Right? That means that maybe initially there wasn't a lot of respect there and there wasn't a lot of love there, and you built a family together, but there's still not a lot of respect and there's still not a lot of love. Right. So I one of my interviewees told me once that sometimes she made emotional financial decisions. So it wasn't just emotional, but it was financial too. Like, I would like to leave, but I did the numbers, and that seems like it's bad math.
With that, and that's the other part of my point. You know, is the economy of it. Like, how much of it is economics?
But that's
versus
from a wife
how much
perspective.
Is from yeah,
right?
yeah.
That
Why would they? Yeah. It's like.
But then again, it depends on, well, can you afford the kind of attorney you need to get exactly what you want? Or again, are you in your marriage for transactional reasons and not necessarily for love and respect, and it doesn't matter what he does as long as he doesn't get caught? I mean, there are as many different reasons as there are people in situations. Right.
And that kind of goes back to your book, too, because I think people have this conception of a rapper and who he is, and it's this character in a lot of cases that has been built, especially in recent years, of this person. They literally can put together a character and step into that character. That's why words have so much power to me, because you know that foresight, I now am, you know. And so where was I going with that? So, you know, as far as creating this character, you know, that character may not necessarily be who that person is. So there's this double identity going on, because the person might just be a family man with a wife and children and doing homework at night with their kids when they're at home, that kind of, you know. And then there's this persona that's on stage. And so for me, sometimes I wonder, you know, because, you know, some rappers are poets, you know, what's behind the metaphor? Did they really mean it in that way, like you were saying? Or was it just a metaphor to get you to think, you know? So where am I going with this? I want to know, like, economically, from an economic perspective, you touched on something that I want to bring up, and is that money isn't made in silos. It can be, but it's not going to have longevity. So all of these careers for what was once just the rapper have now, I think, they're more fully utilizing. And so there is the ability to be the producer, the writer, you know, have their own companies now, have television shows, make movies, and be the star of the movie or just the producer of the movie, and all these things. That's the part about rap that I'm intrigued with, because it started with that little boy from the ghetto who lived in the projects, didn't have enough to eat in a lot of cases, who figured out how to make music his income, and now it's grown into this almost monopoly of businesses that are all being fed by it. And so when you come back to the rapper, is he really profiting from this? That's a long question,
the rapper just as rapper? No.
Right.
You know, not until you release your 6 albums,
Right.
and then you might be free enough to release something on your own. I mean, where's
Right.
Lil Wayne? Case in point.
Yes.
Right? He's tied up in court now. I heard the reason why the Outkast doesn't have an album is because they've got contract issues. And Andre 3000 is like, no, I'm not producing another album for them.
Yeah.
And Big Boy's like, come on, we can do the one and be free. And it's like, no, Tribe Called Quest.
Right.
You know, so no, the rap game hasn't changed. As just a rapper releasing rap albums that like no one's buying anymore, right? If
'Cause
that's
they
your
can download it
only, if that's
free.
your only source of income, then no, that's not a get rich quick plan anymore.
Okay.
If it ever was.
If it
quite
ever
frankly.
was. Yeah, but I think there's this illusion that it is when
Well, because rappers are so good at making it look
the
easy.
story. Yes.
Yeah, and so kids grow up and I could do that, right? I
Right.
could do that, but there's really what we don't see. There's like all the hustling and all the trauma and all the backdoor negotiations and all the bills you owe the record company, all the
Right.
things you have to, the less glamorous side. That's not what we
Exactly.
see.
Yeah. And I think that is a part of, you know, the reason I do this show is because, you know, a lot of things look glamorous on the outside. But if there isn't this back part, the education of what you're getting yourself into, you know, you have the talent, you are a poet, you know, you are a musician, You have something to say. You have that star quality. But what is behind that? How can you make this something that you can look back on after 40 years and say, I was able to create a legacy for my family?
Mm-hmm.
And just being the
And
rapper
I was
doesn't
proud
do
of
it.
how I did it.
And I was proud of how I did it. Right. But just being the rapper, I don't see that sustaining itself in that manner.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, even the original rappers, I mean, they haven't. Ice
No.
Cube, Ice-T, all of them, like, they found other avenues.
They evolved.
Yeah, they did.
Evolved, yeah. So
Yeah.
for the young people who are listening, you know, not to say that rap isn't a vehicle to get you to where you want to go.
Just make it one.
Just
of your
make
vehicles.
it one of your vehicles, understanding that money is not made in silos.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have multiple streams of income
Yes.
to survive, because when one's hitting, one may not
Yes.
be.
I'm
Right.
just going to shout out all my friends today. So
Sure.
Dr. Rachel Hastings and I were having a conversation the other day, and she's like, I have
Absolutely.
7 streams of income.
7 streams of income. That's right.
And that's what we're always working on,
That's
7
right.
streams of income.
Get to your
I've
7
got
streams
4.
of income.
I need 3 more to go.
That's right. That's right. So along with the talent, you know, along with, you know, because we talked about that before, that, you know, one of the reasons you kind of stepped out was because you realized, hey, I'm a professor, I'm a doctor, but, you know, I need to have multiple streams of income also, you know, that we need, you know, in this economy. And as always, you know, you need to be able to make money more than one way.
Yes.
So I always like to make that a point of this show. I
Yes.
don't want it to get lost in the sauce.
Nope.
You know, so the multiple streams of income is important. And Dr. Utley said 7. So work on your 7. We have a doctor in the house. Hello. That means she's smart. I just had to say that.
I know, at least that's what I tell people. It's fine.
But you got the paper to prove it. Like, so, as we move on, and I don't want to get too far away from the book, but you're such an interesting person that I wind up all over the place. I got to look back at my notes so I can kind of stick to the script of why we're here today. Have you been contacted by any of the rappers that are in your book? Does anybody have like anything to say? Because I mean, you don't make them look bad, but you know, does anybody like contact you and say, "Hey, you know, I heard you wrote something about me. I read it and
No, not like that. But I've gotten a few shout outs on Twitter.
That's cool.
Which is super awesome. So
Yeah.
Ghostface Killah tweeted about the book, and like that was really
Yay.
cool. A friend of mine had Lupe Fiasco on her campus, and
Mm-hmm.
she gave him a copy of the book, and he tweeted about it. And I don't know, like he did some evening talk on her campus. Maybe it was like 8 or 9 o'clock, and I'm in California. All of a sudden, my Twitter feed like blows up, but I'm like,
Wow.
my phone's going off, and I'm like, what's happening? I was like, oh my gosh, Lupe tweeted about my book, and so a lot of his followers then wanted to know about it, and they were tweeting at me, and so I spent the next like 90 minutes on my phone, like managing Lupe's fans, who I were hoping would become my fans.
right?
And then I did a radio interview, and I'm a real fan of Boots from The Coup, and I was totally fangirling on the. I didn't think he would ever listen to it, right? And so, but they sent it to him.
That's cool.
And so he actually hit me up and was like, I'm going to have to get a copy of the book. That sounds really interesting. And so I was part embarrassed and like part thrilled about that. So I've had a handful of rappers like reach out to me on Twitter or just mention the book. But other than that, no direct connections.
Yeah, that's because you're not hating on them in the book. There's no reason for anger. So
no one's
you
coming
know
to
what I mean?
find me.
It's an analytical.
It's one person's perspective.
One person's
Yes.
perspective, right? And it's not from a negative perspective. It's just from analytical. And what made you, well, I know in the book, but I want you to tell us, what made you decide to make the comparison, you know, how rappers view God or how they use it in their lyrics? What made you?
It wasn't me. It was the rappers. I didn't have to look for it. It was always there.
Yeah.
You know, like once I was attuned to it, it was everywhere.
It's everywhere. Yeah.
So it was just a matter of figuring out, like, how does this work? You know, I tell people I'm interested in rap religion, and they want to know, well, how come they shout out Jesus at the award shows and they have this really terrible music? And isn't that a contradiction? That's what students always want to know. Like, isn't that a
Right.
contradiction? Isn't that a contradiction? I'm like, well, no, not really, right? If you think about where rappers come from and you think about like mama and grandmama and them back home, they
That's
totally
right.
expect you to shout out Jesus Christ
That's
as your
right.
Lord and Savior.
Whether
like,
you're walking a white lifestyle or not.
Right? That's respectability.
That's
I mean, that's how
right.
you pay homage to the people that you come from. And just because your lifestyle might not match what it is that you say you believe, I believe that makes you human, right?
Exactly.
It doesn't necessarily make you a bad person.
Exactly.
And a lot of that is cultural from your audience. If you know that your audience comes from a religious background, like, why wouldn't you speak the language that they use? Right?
Exactly.
That's a point
Universal language.
point of connection. And then also, when you're surrounded by death, like everywhere you go, then absolutely you start thinking about what happens next. Like, is there a heaven? Is there a hell? Am I going there? Do I care?
Which one?
Could I send other people there? You know, like what exactly does that mean, right? And so whether you believe it or not, you start to have conversations about these possibilities, and that's what a lot of rappers are doing. Like they're not using Christianity to proselytize. They're like,
No.
these are the themes in the world that I grew up with. Jay-Z says religion was in the air,
Right.
you know, where he was from in New York, and so you just take that and you put it into your work because it's part
It's
of
a
who
part
you
of who you are. That's right.
Yeah.
What about the hip hop Illuminati?
What about them?
Does it exist?
That's a great question.
My short answer is no. Like, the Illuminati is so busy with other things, like namely this election, right? That they don't really have time to be worried about Jay-Z and Beyonce.
So there is an Illuminati, you're saying?
Yeah.
You're saying that on camera?
Where's the camera? Yeah.
She said it, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, of course
Whether
it
they
is.
go by the name Illuminati or not, but yeah.
I think,
But I think Illuminati got so much traction in the hip hop world because it was another form of hateration. Like most of those theories, and I met with one of them, they were young white men sitting behind their computers, like jealous of black people who had become financially successful. They were like, well, how do we undermine them? Well, I know. We'll just say that they're like in bed with the Illuminati and there's some plot to like destroy America, et cetera, et cetera. But because rappers are rappers, they're like, wait, if I'm with the Illuminati, then I'm a badass. Let me rap about how I'm part of the Illuminati. Like they were just like, this is going to be great to play with. And then people would hear it and hear the rumors, and it would raise their status. And it was like a win as far as the rappers were concerned. They're laughing all the way to the bank.
Exactly.
Right? But like Eminem, who actually raps about like murdering people and deals with the devil, no one says that he's part of the Illuminati.
Right.
That's how we know it's race-based.
Oh.
Right? And there's some white women, like Lady Gaga, like she would get a little bit too, but she's an outlier, right? Because the way she plays with sexuality, and she's a woman, so it's easier to police and like punish that kind of identity.
Definitely.
But I also think it got a lot of traction because there are so many young kids of color that grew up very religious that really do believe that, well, you know, the devil is alive, right? And then just like I was, that, you know, very religious kid, it's like, well, the devil could be playing the music, like this is the devil's music, like we have a reason to look at these artists in a more suspect way because we come from that cultural background.
Exactly.
So it was a fantastic, like profitable, like economic, like mix. The conspiracy theory, and conspiracies only work when we're in times of flux. Right? So when people are trying to figure out like why is the world a crazy place, like I don't really understand what's happening, like here's a conspiracy theory. If everybody like understands where they are and where they're going, you don't need conspiracy theories, right? The world makes sense.
That's right.
But as soon as it doesn't, then the door's open for them to come in and for people to start to play with them. So that's my take on the Illuminati and hip hop. Like I do not think that there's an Illuminati like making all these big choices for hip hop, but is it big business? I mean, yes.
Absolutely.
Is it capitalism? Yes. And are there people doing like shady deals to maximize their profits? Yes.
And it doesn't have to be named Illuminati. That's
No.
just a big name.
That's just the name we're
Or-
using right now.
That's right. For the acts that happen behind the curtain.
Yes.
Wow. Now, your book. How do people, if they want to buy your book, how do they find it? I mean,
Amazon.
I know Amazon.
Buy the paperback version.
Buy the
it's cheaper.
paperback version is cheaper, and the proceeds will go to the writer, which is very important to me.
Yes. It's one of my streams of income.
Exactly. It's one of her streams of income, and she bills her other three. So, you know, this book, I think it's amazing, and I think it's definitely a great look at rap and religion and how they are intertwined. And I think that you represent the rappers in the book very well. And so that's why you don't get hate mail from them. Cause you
Or maybe because they don't know it exists. There's
no,
also that.
no. If it was hate mail, believe me, someone would tell them. You know, so that says a lot too. But if you want to get a copy of the book, check it out on Amazon. Get a paperback copy of the book, and we're going to actually give one away.
Yes, let's do it.
So how are we going to do this? So let's think of a hashtag for one of my followers.
Hashtag rap and religion.
Hashtag rap and religion. And so if you hashtag rap and religion and you follow us on Instagram,
Instagram.
then and Twitter, and Facebook, we will give away one of these books
Nice.
to the lucky person.
I'll sign it before I leave.
Yeah. And the person who wins the book, what I'll do is we'll actually make sure they get it, and we'll take some pictures of them with your book.
And then hashtag rap
then
and religion and put them on the
hashtag
internet.
Rap and religion and put them on the internet too. Yeah.
Yes.
So I like that. I like that.
Nice.
This is great. I love the book. I encourage everyone to read it. Whether you're into rap or not, I think this is a wonderful analytical view of this culture from an educated perspective. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that you have lifted rap to a whole new level. And I
you.
thank you for that.
Thank you.
And you are definitely a testament to you. You can't put rap in a box and say that it looks one certain way, because it doesn't.
It doesn't.
It has globalized, and it's on every economic level and every level of education.
Even from the beginning. I mean,
From
rap has
the
always
beginning, it
had
has
so much
always.
diversity. If you're not watching the Get Down, you should.
Exactly.
It's awesome.
That's right.
And
That's
it'll give
right.
you, I mean, from the Puerto Rican perspective, the African American
right.
perspective, the white perspective, the different types, the different crews, the different
right.
elements of hip hop. Like it's all there. It really
all
has
there.
been a
Yes.
diverse movement. So I'm just, again, intervening in the beginning of the middle.
This is the beginning of the middles.
Yes, the beginning of the middles, plural. It's
That's
perfect.
right.
And then I wanted to point out, I wore my T-shirt today. I don't know if
I
you can
see
see.
that.
It says "Keep calm and
Keep
read a
calm
book."
And read a book.
And I
Can
was
we
going to use a
please?
Sharpie and make it my book, but then I thought it might ruin the T-shirt. But keep calm and read a book.
Keep calm and read a book. Definitely. Dr. Utley, thank you so much for
Thanks
coming
for
on the
having me
show
back.
again. Promise to come back, because you're doing so much.
Yeah, I mean, third
You
time's a
gotta-
charm, so.
Absolutely. We got to keep updated on where you're going and what you're doing and how you're building these multiple streams of income. You're up to 4, 3 to go.
3 to go.
I want to be a part of every one of them.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is Miss Charline. This has been Lunch with the Finance Bunch. Please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, watch us on YouTube, and listen to us on Accelerated Radio. Thank you so much, Dr. Utley. You have been a wonderful guest. Yay!
Thank you.
I need a hug.